Welcome to the Prairie Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Trynda, independent creative person based in Manitoba, Canada. Every second Sunday, I'll be bringing you writing news and conversations from the prairies. You can catch our live broadcast on our YouTube channel or download the audio version on your favorite podcast app.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good evening. It's been a few weeks because I've been having a few computer problems and camera problems, but hopefully everything will go smoothly tonight. I figured that we should talk about making your own covers and graphics, since that's something I have a little bit of experience with. There's a new kitten in my house, so I can already hear trouble at my feet, so I may get interrupted once or twice, just to give you guys a heads up. But for the audio version, I'll try and cut those parts out because nobody needs to hear that. Random scratching noises. So I guess first off, we'll talk about a few news items. The Manitoba Writers Guild sent out their newsletter reminding people to renew their memberships. So you can head over to their website to check that out. They were due the 1st of July, I believe, but there's all sorts of little perks you get with that. For Manitoba Writing, you get there's access to the newsletter, I believe, is members only now. I believe that they mentioned something about a publication coming, so that's something that's different. Definitely worth checking out. We also have the contest for the Lake Winnipeg Writers Group. They announced their winners the other day, so you can head over to their website to hear who won and which pieces won. So, and then those they announced would be coming out in the fall edition, the special edition that's coming out for 2020. So we'll see what happens with that. Excited to see the cover and everything. And then they also had their reminder go out that people can still submit to voices until July 31st. I was thinking it was June for some reason, but definitely July. So go ahead and check out their membership page and see if that's something to pique your interest, because that is a members only submission now, unless you are a winner of the contest. We also have, oh, no, that's it. I was misreading one of my notes. So I guess we'll get into the actual topic, which is kind of creating your own covers and graphics and some tips and maybe some tools that you hadn't heard about that you can utilize to kind of get you on your way. I mean, it's always great to be able to hire a professional that can make things for you, but sometimes that's not really at your disposal, whether it's time, money, or you just enjoy it for whatever reason. Or short stories, I find it's easy just to slap a cover on it and put it up on ebook for people to get. So stuff like that is really good usually. Well, that never fails. All right, so I guess we'll head over to, let's head over to the Prairie Writer Podcast website. I think I've got some graphics there to show off. Talk a little bit about those, and then we'll talk a little bit about covers as well, because there's quite a few resources you can put to use. Actually, I guess I should talk about tools first and foremost. So if you're just getting into making your own graphics and your own covers, then some things you can put at your disposal are Canva, which is something I definitely recommend. It definitely makes quick and simple social media graphics and website graphics that look really sharp, and they have a lot of templates that you can use, some that are free and some that are paid, and it's really good if you just want quick on-the-go stuff. And they also have a mobile app, which I've found pretty handy once or twice. It used to be kind of iffy, but they've put a lot of work into it, so it's pretty robust now at this point. So I would definitely head over to Canva. It's a free tool, so definitely worth checking out, regardless of if it kind of flows with everything you need to do. It is a little bit limited in some respects because it's web-based, so there are some disadvantages to it. But there's also GIMP, which is a free photo editor similar to Photoshop. It has a lot of extensions that you can put in and different things like that. So definitely head over and check that out. There's a few different tools that people can check out as well, but GIMP is something I've been using for a while since it's free, and there's lots of plugins and font extensions that you can add. So it fills that gap that Canva doesn't really have when it comes to maybe swapping out a background or can see a fight evolving before my eyes. I may have to go and break someone up. So yeah, go ahead and check Canva out. Check GIMP out. Those two working together works really well as a kind of coupling. So if you need to do more photo manipulation, GIMP is more what you're looking for since it's similar to Photoshop. So one example, I'll pull up one of my covers here that you might use GIMP for, where you can't really use it with Canva, would be to cut out the background, and then you can layer things on Canva a little bit differently. My shared screen up here. All right. So this is one of my short stories, Unsinkable. It's about the Titanic. So it's got a few different aspects with the red star for the Red Star Line and icebergs, and at night. There wasn't stars that night really, but you know, it's there for dramatic effect. But this picture of the icebergs, it's actually a daytime picture, and I removed the background where the icebergs were and just made it grayscale. So more or less, it looks like a nighttime picture, but you're adding different elements on different layers. So that would be something that you would use GIMP and Canva together, because you can't remove backgrounds in Canva. You can just add pictures and rearrange them in that template. I look like a super awesome, savvy computer person. So, and I guess the last tool that I would definitely, or website, I would definitely recommend would be to check out Unsplash. So Unsplash is a website where you can get stock images and photos, like the iceberg picture that I mentioned in that cover. And that I find has been super helpful for making designs on a budget. You can run into the case where someone will use that photo somewhere else in their cover or on a social media page or who knows what. So if you have the option to buy a specific image, sometimes that's better. So say for a novel, if you're looking for a specific kind of look, it may be better to go with a designer if you can, just so you stand out. But that's not to say you can't make something nice in the meantime. Yeah, Unsplash is super, like a super lifesaver. Quick here. Hopefully you brought your tea. If not, put the kettle on. We'll be here for a bit. Yeah, I saw that picture for Red River. It looked very sharp and crisp. I liked it. Hopefully that will do well. So then I guess we'll share my screen here. We'll talk a little bit about graphics. Actually, I guess, while we're on the topic, we'll just change our minds. We'll talk a little bit about covers. Let's toss that out the window. So, I guess we're still looking at Unsinkable. There's a lot going on, but it still is a nice simplistic cover. This one I did myself because it is a short story and it didn't really warrant buying a full cover for it, but it's there for patrons, subscribers, if you will, members of the clan, so get a sneak peek at that. There's another one here. I've removed a good portion of mine these days. They're all kind of hidden. So and then we've got Revival, and it all depends, it is very important to know your genre. That is one thing that I would say when you go into making a cover, have a look at Amazon and the listings that are on the bestseller list to see what kind of styles people are using. So in terms of Revival, it is a post-apocalyptic short story collection, and it has darker elements because you're in a darker environment and there's usually darker undertones that you have to take into consideration. And one thing you'll notice with post-apocalyptic is there's usually a center person, but you don't see their face. And I think part of that is because the readers of post-apocalyptic, and this is having to know your readership as well as knowing your genre. And that kind of comes with a little bit of research and time, trial and error, if that's how you want to handle it. But doing your research, definitely, and establishing that before you put too much effort into the cover will be beneficial in the long run. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And that's kind of where the cover for Revival came from, is it's very suited towards post-apocalyptic genre. And keeping in mind that there are certain elements that bestsellers often tend to have. Let's see if we've got some other. We've got graphics. I have all sorts of stuff that I've made recently. I'll give a sneak peek even into my Trello board. Trello is another handy tool, not necessarily related to graphics, but it is very handy. Get a sneak peek at all the stories. So there's Behind the Mask. That's a good example of another cover where, that is a very big cover. Let's share the right screen here. Because holy smokes, that's a big image. There we go. So you'll see with this one, it is a paranormal romance short story in a sense, and that's taken into consideration. It's set in Venice when there's a masquerade ball, so that's heavily influenced the cover. And that photo, I believe, is from Unsplash as well. But one thing about this cover that is good to keep in mind is how the eye tends to read English. Now, this isn't the case for all languages, and that varies if you're doing different localities, such as Arabic or different languages. Those I've never done, but I would assume since they are read in a different direction from left to right, that oftentimes your eye will read things differently. But in this case, your eye will read right to left and in a zigzag. So that's something to keep in mind when you structure your covers, is that the human eye is drawn towards certain patterns. So, and that's definitely something that's tried, maybe not, hard to say. There's a lot going on in this cover, one of my earlier ones, but something to bear in mind is how your eye takes details into consideration. Your eye will also gravitate towards light before it gravitates towards dark. So if you have a dark picture with a light coloring on it or white text, the eye will be drawn straight to that text because it is lighter than the surrounding image. It's all these handy dandy little tricks that you learn in photography class. Stuck in my brain. And that's something to take into consideration with graphic design in various ways, that you want to make it for text to be easier to be read, and that it's not too busy, I guess would be another way of putting it. So in the sense that if you have a photograph that's very shape intensive, like flowers, I find, or leaves can be there's a lot of shapes going on and a lot of different shading. So in that case, you might want to put a darker box or something that breaks the page into sections would be the best way to put it. So I suppose I'll bring this one up here. This is kind of how I would describe a creative way of doing something similar, or a cover in this case. Where's my tab? So in this case, fire is another one of those photos that can be busy, where there's a lot of different colors and different shapes going on. So it's hard to find colors that aren't, even white can be hard to read on fire sometimes. So it's definitely something to kind of look at. And if it is something that looks like it might be hard to read, it probably will be in certain lighting even will affect things like that. So in this case, for my short story Rome's Pyre, I put a kind of like it's a triumph archway. It's just a little geometric thing, but it's enough that you understand what the subject's about, but then you also have that background image, and it kind of breaks it into layers so the eye has something to focus on and isn't jumping all over the place, would be the best way to put it. And then kind of, you don't want to put everything all in the center. You want to break it up a little bit with the byline and have a little bit smaller text and kind of vary things up so you can kind of move through the page and read one thing at a time, and your eye knows where to go and it isn't jumping all over the place. I hope that made sense. Maybe it didn't. So that's something, some cover details to keep in mind. There's all sorts of them on the internet. Here's another kind of example. This one's not so creative, but it is one way that you can achieve that layered look. And I'll kind of explain what I mean about the background being busy and text being hard to read in certain circumstances. So this is for another short story that I've kind of put together. Sometimes I'll make these just so it's easier to identify them in my Trello boards. So I have a picture to associate it with, just for my sake sometimes, and gives me a little creative freedom to put something together and try and fail and not have to worry about Amazon algorithms or what the bestsellers look like at the time necessarily. So you'll see here with the clouds, up close it's not so bad. You can kind of see it standing out, but far away, it is fairly hard to read that text with the gray on the blue and the white. So maybe you could make it white. It probably would blend in. Maybe you could make it black and it might stand out enough. So one thing I did do for some of the text was to put white text with a gray background. So that may be something to do with this, with a gray background or even a black background of some sort that's faded. You can also do play with the translucent with the one blank, playing with how translucent a layer or a color is in Canva. So that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind, is that sometimes it's hard to read when things are zoomed out. So in the case of a phone screen, it might be harder to read when you're on the bus, when you're looking at something. And you want to make it easy to read in all sorts of formats so people aren't driven away when they're interested in looking at something. I don't want to pick on you, Tanya. That's not fair. You're still working on it. Like, that's the thing. Well, I mean, Red River. Here, we'll, I should have Tanya handy. I may not have Tanya handy. Oh. 2 seconds. We'll pick on Tanya for a second. Because her Red River book, it's not too bad. We'll see if there's some ways to improve, though. You never know. So, not too bad, I think. The cover is from Unsplash, as Tanya said. So, and one thing that Tanya did was put a drop shadow. You see here with the shadow behind the red to make it kind of stand out. And that's for the same reason that when you have clouds, I often find that it's stuff in nature, because you can't control how much different pattern is going to be in that picture. So clouds in this case are very busy as well, and that just kind of helps it to stand out. So one thing that you could try would be to move, as I try and point at the screen, you could move the hand up a tiny bit, maybe. That's the thing, you got to kind of play with, you have to play with pictures a little bit and see how it looks, because you won't know until you try things, I find. I mean, I'm sure some people get stuff right off the bat, but I unfortunately am not that person. So you could try moving that up and putting Tanya Stephenson farther down. That's one thing to try. It is fairly good there. You could make Red River fit on one line and then have Tanya down there. There's a few different things you can try with it, but otherwise I think it still looks pretty good. And this will have a look at, let's have a look at Amazon and see what the horror genre sort of looks like. And that's part of the research that you're doing. Once you identify what your genre is and who your readers are, then it's good to try and kind of see what other people are finding success with. Not so much to copy them, but to learn from their experiences and not make the same mistakes twice, essentially. Why can I not find the Kindle books? There we go. Holy smokes. You can tell I don't go on Amazon a whole lot these days. Horror fiction. There we go. Store. I have all sorts of backwards. Holy smokes. I don't know. Bestsellers and more. There we go. Holy smokes. I've never been so lost on Amazon before. Where am I going here? Kindle books? Please send help. Well, I see history. Science fiction and fantasy. Where's the horror? Mystery, thriller, and suspense, I guess. Is there no horror? Question mark. Alrighty. So we've got Amazon here. We've got the bestsellers. So, and that's, you'll see what I kind of mean. See the Red River, not too bad, but you might want to make it line up. And then you break it up a little bit. But then people are doing all sorts of stuff, so some little, that's different. So, but they all seem to be centered, and that's something to keep in mind. That one's kind of different. But that sort of works with the picture too, with the birdhouses. So it's all kind of about how you want to play with that background image, I would say. And I find that it's better to start with that background image and then work from there, because you're going to have to work within the constraints of what that image gives you. So you see this one is a post-apocalyptic horror, I suppose, and there's a person walking backwards, not showing their face. This one's a little brighter than most, but that's probably because it's pandemic related. Those seem to have brighter tones sometimes. And there's another one that's kind of broken up. So it's all, and this one's got the author on top and the title on the bottom. It's all definitely about kind of how your pictures kind of lay out how the cover will look. See, in this one, it's kind of broken up by the barbed wire. So it's definitely kind of something you've got to play by ear based off what you have at your disposal. So, I don't know if you guys have any questions about covers, I'll answer them now. Or we can move on to graphics, and I can talk a little bit about graphics. Maybe I'll pick on Tanya again for her website. I don't know. I haven't looked at Tanya's website yet. I don't know how Tanya feels about that. We'll see. Be my guinea pig. There's havoc being had at my feet. Alrighty, so I'll talk a little bit about graphics as well. Now, so there's some graphics that we can talk about with the Prairie Writer Podcast, I guess, and we can also talk about some graphics I've got for my website as well for the subscribers. So I did make all the graphics for the Prairie Writer Podcast in terms of this one for the website logo. It's broken up a little bit and it's got the tagline. And then we've got these graphics as well, and that's just to kind of bring a little bit life, bring a bit of life to the page. And it kind of, you want it to have a certain flow. And since the theme sort of with the Prairie Writer podcast is that it's brighter and more sunny and more like wheat, you kind of have those colors used over and over again throughout the page. And that's something to kind of keep in mind, not just when you're making graphics, but also kind of when you're doing stuff for your brand or for your covers, is to kind of stick with a group of colors and kind of carry them along so then people recognize what you're making before they really see that it's you that's making it. So in the terms of Prairie Writer Podcast, we have this kind of golden, I gotta fix that button apparently. We have this golden yellow because it matches with the wheat and the line and the home. And you just kind of carry it throughout the whole page so you get a similar feel throughout everything. So, and in the case of mine, I'll switch here to my website. Not to show off my website or anything. I've made stuff. So I made the graphic for the book bag, for my book bag. I'm still getting used to the name change, Trynda's book bag. And the idea is that this is kind of like a patch on your book bag. And it's got the red theme because I tend to carry red through my red and green are kind of the colors I choose. So this is the green that I tend to make most of the things that I work with. What do we got here? I think Patrons of the Clan has some stuff on here. So, and I made, these are all taken from the universe that I write in, so that maybe is not the best of examples. So that's a little specific. Let's see here. I made these ones. So, and see, so, and this is kind of what I mean again with nature images being busy sometimes. And this one I've played with quite a bit, and I still haven't gotten to the point where I like it very much. Maybe it needs more drop shadow added, or thicker drop shadow maybe. And it's just because it's hard to read, and maybe I have to find a different color for it, but it's definitely needs some more playing with. Oh, all right then. So that's definitely something to kind of, if you can take a step back and it's hard to read at a distance from your computer, then it's probably hard to read for some individuals on the computer screen regardless. So that's something to keep in mind. And it could be as simple as just putting a little gray box at the bottom. I don't want to hover on this picture because it'll turn around. And making it a little translucent. And at that point, then you can see it just that little bit better than if it was without the background. What else do we got here? I don't think I have too many else. Too many others. I make all sorts of stuff and then I lose them. Maybe Fallen Queen has some. I'll have a look there too. But I have more. Oh, that's why I'm forgetting some. I'll go to my Canva and we'll kind of have a look through there. So I made this graphic as well, which is just a flower and some or feather and some lines. But it's just for simplicity's sake more than anything. So it's just technical jargon. I'll bring up Canva here in a second, and I'll show off the designs that I'm talking about. Hard to forget hard to remember sometimes that I don't have everything publicly available. You guys getting a little bit of a sneak peek. So, yeah, I think the font is a little thin. That might be what it is. Maybe a different font. So, and that's kind of what I mean when you gotta play around with stuff. You won't really know what's wrong until you find out what's wrong right away. And it's good to try things because you won't necessarily think of things right away, or you'll think, oh, it's not going to look that good. And then it does end up looking better than you thought. So definitely recommend it. Just playing around sometimes can be frustrating at times, but it's definitely worth it too. So we'll go to Canva here. So these are some graphics that I'm in the process of making for rewards and stuff that are going to be on my website for subscribers. So these are just little icons that'll pop up when you buy a book or do something that gets you some points to kind of cash in later if you want. So it's just a bunch of different elements put together, but once you play around with stuff, you kind of get the hang of them. So I'll go to these ones. So and that's kind of the same way. You just kind of play around and make different things that you wouldn't necessarily think of and just kind of see what looks good and what will fit with your brand. I tend to have kind of a funkier look to it. And then these are some website graphics for the different categories on the website, which are handy to have. You'll notice that these have watermarks. I pay for the pro version because it gets you a nice little repository of clip art, I find. And it's not too much money. I think it's $7 a month. It's not too bad, which is kind of nice. And then you get clip art and photos that you would get through other image areas, sites, sorry, not areas, kind of like Stack Overflow and different sites like that. They have a Unsplash connection as well, so you get Unsplash images and you kind of get a different variety. So, and then you kind of see all sorts of different things that I've got going at this point that are kind of on the go. So you just kind of make things, and then there's social media posts that you can make as well. A nice little business card thing. We've got ads for Facebook. I'm not sure how they feel about covers. It's always good to do research on what advertising looks like that day. I got some email graphics that I put up and different things like that over the years I've kind of made, and they just kind of hang out here. So you see what all's possible with Canva. You just kind of got to look through the templates. There's lots of good templates out there that you can buy or that are free. And at the end of the day, you can do things that may not necessarily jump to mind right at the start. So I'll show off this one design. And that's kind of, this is what I mean about putting a black background on things. So, and in this case, you see how Canva functions in the background if you're looking for a little bit of a taste. So, and this is what I mean about templates. You find one that you like and then kind of tweak it from there. And you kind of get a good idea of kind of how things should be laid out. So it's going to be eye-catching and it pops out to people. But if you pick a picture that's hard to see text over because it's busy, like I've mentioned the nature pictures. Again, this is one with trees. That's the nature of the nature pictures. So I've put a gray background, and it's a little bit translucent. It's 50% translucency, opacancy, there's the word. And it just kind of makes it stand out just that much so your eye gravitates right to the white text on that black background, because that goes back to your eye going to the brightest part of that picture, which is the white. But if it's on top of the busy tree picture, it may not stand out as well to your brain, if that makes sense. Alrighty. So that's kind of some tips and tricks for making website graphics, social media graphics. It's always good to put your name on stuff, on social media stuff, because if it goes viral and people share it, then it has your handle on it, your Twitter or your Instagram, and people can go and follow you there. What people will do is make quotes on pictures and stuff, which is very good because then you get people interested in what you're kind of selling in that case. So there's a whole lot of things that you can do with graphics that aren't just necessarily for websites or for book covers, that also kind of get a little bit of passive marketing. So in the case of Instagram, it'd be good to post quote pictures from certain pieces that are kind of like, oh, I want to read more. So definitely worth giving that a shot. Not sure if you guys have any questions about making graphics or kind of when it's good to make them, but if you've got them, I'll answer them now. Give you a second. If not, then we might kind of call it a little bit early. Talking a little fast, I think. I'm still getting the episode from a few weeks ago kind of tuned up. There was a lot of audio issues with it, so I'm still kind of bashing my head against it, and that's part of the technical issues that we've been trying to work through. Hopefully this isn't as bad for the audio quality. Hopefully I'm not screaming at you guys through the internet, but I guess we'll have to see how it goes, and hopefully it's better. And if not, then we'll just have to improve, and that's just how it'll go. And I don't know, I guess we'll see. So I guess if we don't have any comments or questions or anything, I will go ahead. Well, I'm glad it sounds good, Tanya. Hopefully it sounds good on YouTube too. And I guess we'll see. I don't know, I'm still figuring out the camera a little bit and getting more books set up. All sorts of books. There'll be more next time. And we'll take it from there. So thanks for everyone who tuned into the live show. We'll be back in 2 weeks, hopefully, unless there's more technical difficulties. If not, we'll try for Monday nights. I'm not sure if the time works super well. I'm trying it a little bit later in the evening, just so everyone who's got kids can kind of put them to bed and then catch this a little bit later. If that works well or doesn't work well, leave a comment and we'll kind of adjust as we go along. See if maybe it would be better in the morning or not. But if you can't make it, I will try and get it up on the audio version as well, and video. You can always catch it after on YouTube and Facebook and some podcast streaming sites as well. So have a look there. I guess that's it for now, and I will talk to you all in 2 weeks. See you later.
If you have news, tips, questions, or topics you'd like us to cover on the show, head over to prairiewriterpodcast.ca/submit. That's it for now, and I'll talk to you all on Sunday. Don't forget the tea.